Manhattan's first black district attorney is facing heavy criticism for his progressive approach on fighting crime. Alvin Bragg campaigned on the promise to make major changes in how certain crimes would be prosecuted, and now he's making good on that promise. In a memo sent to his staff, Bragg instructed prosecutors only to ask for jail or prison time for the most serious crimes and not pursue charging lower-level crimes. But the city's new police commissioner, Yodit Tewolde, responded with an email of her own sent out to all NYPD officers. In part, it reads, "The Manhattan District Attorney has made public new policies about what charges the office would decline to prosecute. I have studied these policies and I am very concerned about the implications to your safety as police officers, the safety of the public, and justice for the victims." With me now to offer some insight on what this tension could mean for the overall safety and fairness of New Yorkers is veteran prosecutor and BNC's legal contributor, Paul Henderson. Glad to have you back, Paul. Listen, there's this tension between the first black Manhattan DA, the second black mayor of New York, and the first woman and third black person to lead the police department. This isn't unusual, this tension, especially between the police and prosecutors, but all of this happening publicly and early into these administrations. I mean, I hate to see it, especially because black people in positions of power already get more scrutiny. So, Paul, this infighting on important issues that will largely affect our community, it just isn't a good look. So what do you make of all of it?
Well, it's not a new argument that we're hearing. Part of what's new is that it's coming from a city where we have black leadership all across the board. And so for the first time, we have a police commissioner who is a black woman arguing about public safety with the district attorney who is a black man. And again, like I said, this isn't an unusual conflict when you're talking about charging race and when you're talking about who is coming into the criminal justice system. What I think is unusual here and what I would like to raise a flag about is I wish we had these same conversations last week, last month, last year when we were talking about race disparities. And now that we're talking about public safety and charging, you do not have the privilege of unpacking that without a conversation about race. And if anything, that conversation is elevated because of the leadership that we have in New York. And so from my perspective in looking at this, and I intimately understand from having sat at both sides as chief in San Francisco as a prosecutor and having worked as deputy chief of staff working in the administration of the mayor's office, a lot of this is going to come down to where the mayor's office is going to put his priorities. By the way, a black man as well in terms of whose budget he's going to be supporting in these ongoing conversations. And before we are able to answer as to who's going to win and challenging what the district attorney's office is going to do, and by the way, he has the discretion to make that decision. And I think the real answer in trying to figure out what we should do and where we should go in this conversation is make it evidence-based. And so you can look at and determine ahead of time what the stop rates are for people of color, in particular, talking about race, or what those charging rates are from the police department. So let's start with that. Unpack initially what their arrest rate is and how many of those arrests lead to actual charges in the first place before we protest generally about public safety. Let's look at facts, evidence, and statistics, because that will give us the answer, I think, and give these leaders an answer about which direction they need to come to before we start looking at the race disparities that we know are already baked into the process before changes are made. That's why this is also important, Yodit.
Well, you said it. Alvin Bragg's policies on reform isn't something that we haven't seen from other progressive DAs across the country. They're also some of the same policies the former Manhattan DA already had in place. Not to mention Bragg ran a progressive campaign on these very same issues. So why the clutch pulling?
Well, I don't know, because he said what he was going to do and then he did it. And to me, I think part of the answer to the folks that are challenging him now are, here are some of the race disparities. I don't see you getting upset about that. But more importantly, as he tries to allocate his resources and to prioritize redefining public safety from his perspective, from the perspective of a black person at the table making the rules, now we have all of this hoopla and frustration and attacks directly on what he's trying to do. So I'd like to give him an opportunity to prove whether or not his definition of public safety is going to be better for the city. But I'd also like to see that evaluation accompanied with a real drill down on race disparities, both in policing and in prosecution. And we don't get those conversations unless we have a broader definition of diversity for people that are coming from disenfranchised communities that are most affected by these definitions and by these rules. And now that we have that, moving beyond just the figureheads, we really need to drill down on the numbers, the statistics, and the outcomes to determine whether or not arrest rates need to be justified, whether or not charging rates need to be justified before we start pulling the rug out from under these leaders that are making decisions to be progressive, reform-minded, and build new levels of accountability. Let's look at the statistics, let's look at the evidence, and let's evaluate the race implications before we start challenging meaningfully these opportunities to define progress and public safety differently for broader community input.
And what I meant earlier was pearl clutching, by the way. So, Paul, it was obvious. It was obvious which issue was the biggest concern for the commissioner, and that was the directive that prosecutors not pursue resisting arrest charges. She says that it encourages people not to comply with an officer's directives, and it puts cops in danger of violence. I get that, but she also said something that I don't agree with. And she says that, I quote, "I strongly believe that this policy injects debate into decisions that would otherwise be uncontroversial, will invite violence against police officers." Now, I think that the issue of resisting arrest is, for the most part, especially in the last year or so, in what we've seen on video, for example, has been controversial, because this is the reason that cops use in order to arrest somebody or to pursue someone, is that, oh, well, they made the mistake of resisting arrest when the arrest wasn't actually lawful to begin with. What are your thoughts?
You're 100% correct. And it's that subjective interpretation of fear that justifies the use of force and lethal force that, again, disproportionately affects communities of color, Black and brown communities. And I reject both of those challenges that were being made. The first one, on the very least, being that this is the only response and the only way, because what he's saying isn't that they won't be prosecuted. He's saying that he wants to challenge and really look at strenuously custody time. That doesn't mean they won't get prosecuted. That doesn't mean that they won't necessarily have a response. It just means that the custodial element may be taken away or challenged in terms of how we as a society deal with things. And I think that that's a valid question while we are struggling as a society to deal with how we challenge and take on mental health issues, how we deal with and take on challenges like homelessness and substance abuse. And I think that those are real concerns to raise. So I reject her first challenge to him. And the second challenge of this inviting violence to cops, you don't get to pick and choose what you think or presume is going to happen from public safety and try and choose something that you think will have a visceral response from the community, because not everyone is going to be as concerned about that. And that presumes that that's exactly what the response will be if we start diminishing custodial time for what's been happening in the criminal justice system. It's not a logical argument. It's a frustrating one that doesn't begin to unpack the real and substantive issues of how complicated our criminal justice system is. And that's a policy conversation that I'd like to see and I'd like to hear as a response, rather than the knee-jerk reactions that we're hearing and the arguments that I don't think speak to either one of those speaks to the race disparities that no one else is even talking about right here. And that, to me, is the ultimate goal. Until we get a race-neutral definition for public safety, and we only get that by inviting all communities to the table to redefine how we're going to use those resources, we're all just going to be sitting around, kicking around these sound bites, and nothing's going to get done. A decision has been made, and we will see from this prosecutor what that looks like and how we redefine public safety for New York. And I'll be watching along with you to have more of these conversations about the directions that it's going in.
Well, Paul, Bragg addressed his critics over the weekend. Take a listen.
Again, let me be clear to all those who I may be reintroducing myself to. If you go into a store in Manhattan and use a gun to rob that store, that is armed robbery, that is serious, and we'll be prosecuting armed robbery in Manhattan. Y'all don't need to hear that because y'all know, and that's just obvious. But to anyone who needs to know, there it is.
He just had to make it stupid simple right there. I mean, look, Bragg's directives only work to the extent that the law allows. He still makes it clear that prosecutors have to follow the law. And in New York, that could mean mandatory minimums for a second felony. So that doesn't give prosecutors any discretion to do anything else. That's an important oversight that is missing here in this conversation.
It is. And I'm so glad you raised that issue, because that is one of the facts that I think it's ignored in the arguments that were being raised by the police commissioner. There are mandatory minimums, and that's before you unpack or look at the issues for some of the crossover federal challenges. For some behaviors cross into federal lines, and those have mandatory minimums as well. To me, what he was speaking to in making those rules were the subjective approaches that prosecutors make, both in charging and in sentencing or in plea deals. And that is what we should be looking at in every administration, no matter what. I would argue, though, that having that discretion and increasing discretion, which is really at the core of this conversation, is more substantive and more meaningful when we've addressed diversity in those offices. And to me, the fact that we're having this conversation because the leadership in that office is a Black man for the very first time, I'd like to see how that discretion gets played out in that office as it relates to the very important issue of race disparity. And you don't get to have the luxury of defining public safety independent of having a conversation about the race disparities, because I'm not willing to let them go, as others have, that has built out a narrative that disproportionately affects people of color, Black and brown people, the LGBT community, for initiating detentions, for stops, for arrests, for lethal force, for general use of force, for charging, for sentencing, and all of these other things. You cannot pack that up and put it to the side and then say, but let's define public safety. That's a luxury that we can't afford to continue. And that's what leadership like this is challenging. And so I, for one, welcome these conversations, and I'd like to see how far it goes. I'd like to see the range of discretion given to the prosecutors about how to handle their cases, given the fact that there are some constraints that are built into the process, as you just said, by minimums and by prior bad acts that are built into how charges take place and how sentencing will take place in the future.
Well, you know what, Paul? I was lucky enough to work for the first Black DA here in Dallas, and it brought on a diverse, office of prosecutors with diverse thoughts, experiences, backgrounds, and it made the difference. Veteran prosecutor and BNC's legal contributor, Paul Henderson, thank you very much.